From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende. Riding shotgun as he does every single podcast is Andre Johnson Jr. Before we get into today's podcast, be sure to like, share, rate, review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Please comment on this wonderful video we're about to drop, and you'll get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. We are back. It is Monday. It is a new month. It is April 1st. We are not messing around with any April Fool's nonsense here. We're going to get right into the podcast, but we're coming off of a holiday weekend. I had a good Easter. How was yours?
Oh, it was really good, really fun. You know, the best thing about the holidays is the thing I talk about most on this show.
Let me hear it.
The food.
That's right.
Gotta have the holiday food.
Did you work yesterday?
I did work yesterday.
So you had to work a little bit. I had to work Saturday. I was off yesterday. I had a good day with the family. Had a good time with everyone, and as we enjoyed the Easter holiday, and we ate good. Had some crawfish. had a few sliders as well. So we had a good weekend, holiday weekend here in the city of New Orleans. But we're back. As we said, it is a new month. It is getting closer and closer. This is draft month. We're a few weeks away from the NFL draft. And wouldn't you know it, today's big picture is the moment I know you all have been waiting for. My first mock draft. I will have two this year. This is mock draft number 1, where I go through all 7 rounds of the Saints selections and project who I believe the Saints will pick. I know you must be excited for today.
Oh, yeah. I've been waiting for this. You know, ever since the official league calendar hit about 3 weeks ago, we've been talking about free agency. We've been talking about draft strategies and how much they may have changed with the acquisitions of, Chase Young and with the Ryan Ramczyk injury news. We talked a little bit about some offensive lineman prospects last week. So now we're getting into it. Mock draft number 1. The Saints 9 picks overall, 1 first rounder, 1 second rounder. Then there's the big gap into the fifth round. No third, no fourth. They've got 4 fifths, 2 sixths, and a 7th. So we're going to start off round 1, pick 14. Now this is assuming the Saints don't make any trades. Yeah. They stay at round 1, pick 14, on the clock. The New Orleans Saints select.
They are on the clock. Yes, we know that they have 7 of their 9 selections are after pick 150. 7 out of 9. So let me just tell you this. The board will not end this way. I guarantee you the board will not end this way for the New Orleans Saints. But for the purposes of this podcast, we just got to go with what they have. I mean, we can project trades, but that just becomes a mess when you're doing mock drafts. And I was doing the simulator, and quite a few enticing offers. But for the time being, we're going to stay with the picks at hand. So, pick 14, round 1, Saints' first round pick. We discussed him last week because I really pivoted towards him when I was doing my tackle research and analysis. It is Olu Fashanu, tackle out of Penn State, 6'6", very good in pass blocking, very good in run blocking, very well rounded. Got great balance when it comes to the pass blocking part of the game. Got great feet, very light on his feet, can backpedal, if he gets beat on a play initially, can recover, got great hand placement. He really is a fantastic prospect and one that probably could still go higher than 14, but one, given where this draft is going with all the quarterbacks and needs for other teams, a player like this might be available or could be available or very well will be available for the Saints at 14. So my 14th overall selection, the Saints' first round pick, I'm going to the line of scrimmage. It is Olu Fashanu. We're going to stick with the Saints' recent trend of drafting either an offensive or defensive line within the first round, their first pick of the draft. That'll be, I believe, 2016 was the first time this has happened, 15 maybe, but it's been a long stretch where they've drafted and invested in the offensive line. That trend continues. I know it's not the sexiest pick out there, but I think you all understand if you're watching this podcast just how dire the situation is for the Saints at tackle. So Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, what you think?
Well, when the Ryan Ramczyk news came out that he could potentially miss the entire 2023 season, you kind of understood that as a draft strategy, it's got to pivot to that offensive lineman. Now, Olu Fashanu, he's rated by some as the best offensive lineman in this draft.
Yep.
I know a lot of people like Joe Alt, but Olu Fashanu has picked up a lot of heat lately. You mentioned him being a really good pass protector. He started 2 years at Penn State.
Yeah.
In those 2 seasons, over 680 snaps in pass protection, he allowed 1 sack. That's a big deal. He's very quick to get to his spot in the run game. And when you think about Clint Kubiak and the kind of offensive linemen that he likes, it's guys who have that movement. It's guys who could be mobile. It's guys who can be agile in the run game.
Mobility, agility. You said it right there.
And Olu's got that. It fits the system. It fits what your need is right now, which is an offensive tackle, because we talked about it last week. You don't know right now who you would even go with at that position who's already on this team. Now, it is a big ask to ask a rookie to step in and start day one, but if you're going to have anybody do it, Olu Fashanu is a really good choice.
And I like that he's coming out of the Big Ten. They still have a lot of they do a lot of running and passing in the Big Ten still. It's a league that I just, there are some things you see in the Big Ten that you don't see anywhere else that I think are translatable into the NFL. So I like that he comes out of there. So yeah, I am perfectly fine. And I really do like this pick of Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, and we'll just hope that he's there at 14 because, as you mentioned, his name is getting hotter and hotter in draft circles, and I believe he will be, and I believe if he's there, the Saints will make that selection.
Yes, and now as we go into round 2, pick 45. Who do the Saints pick?
All right, I'm staying on the line of scrimmage, but I'm going to the opposite side. This was a guy. Wasn't initially on my radar, but the more and more I watched, the more I looked at his career, the more I really loved how this guy played. Defensive tackle Braden Fisk out of Florida State. He tested incredibly well at the combine. Then I turned on the tape. Now, look, Florida State had some beasts, had some dogs on that defensive line. And this was a guy that transferred in from either Eastern Michigan or Western Michigan last year for his last year of playing. That's not easy to do. That's from a directional Michigan school to the ACC, Florida State, who went undefeated in the regular season a season ago. We saw what happened with the college football playoff in the bowl game, but I'm not even going to worry about that. This guy can line up. He can shade the center at the 1 technique. He can play the 3 technique. Disruptive. I think he's 6'4", about 290, 295. Has a great first step. Can really fight off blocks. And when he gets double teamed, I love the way he holds up at the point of attack. And it wasn't like he was playing scrubs. I mean, you see the tape, you see who he was playing, and clearly he went to Florida State to get to kind of, see what he can do against some higher level of competition. And he shined. 45. I went through the simulator, a couple different simulators. This might be a little high for Fisk, at least according to a couple of simulators that I saw, but he's somewhere in that 45 to 58 range. And given the fact that the Saints could certainly use a nice rotation up front at defensive tackle, they lost Malcolm Roach, obviously. I think this could be a really good selection. I really like this player, and I think he's a guy that could, if they were to bring him in, would figure out a way to get some playing time and be a part of that rotation. So Braden Fisk, defensive tackle from Florida State. Again, I like the fact that he can line up as the nose. He can line up in the 3 technique, and he's a guy that can play the run and the pass, and he really fit in well at a place that was foreign to him last year, and they didn't miss a beat. In fact, you can make a case because of his presence was a big reason why they were able to go undefeated. Absolutely,
and that's a team in Florida State that lost their quarterback, Jordan Travis, and that defense was still able to help carry all of those backups to still having a really good record and a really good season. Now, when you watch Fisk, the one thing that jumps out, that guy is a physical freak. You look at his combine numbers. He had as a defensive tackle, he ran a 4.7.
Yeah.
Fastest among defensive tackles at the NFL Combine. This guy's athleticism goes without question. And that defensive tackle position is interesting because as we talk about the Saints' needs, you get so caught up in edge rushers, offensive linemen. Defensive tackle is almost out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
But last year, you bring in Colin Saunders, Nathan Shepard to play that position. They played well, but if you're looking for a more long-term solution there, you just got Brian Brzee potentially putting Braden Fisk next to Brian Brzee. Braden Fisk, by the way, a guy who had 6 sacks in each of his last 2 seasons. So he's not just a run stuffer.
Yeah.
He can get after the passer. With that physical freak nature that I was talking about earlier, he can run down your quarterback, get him to the ground. I think Fisk and Brian Brzee next to each other, that could be a really good interior defensive line pairing
and you
for years to come.
throwing a couple veterans like Saunders and Shepard. You had a nice little rotation there at a position where it's not easy to be deep at D tackle. It's a hard position to find both quality and quantity, and I think this could be a pick that could certainly address both. All right, so now we hit the gap.
Yep.
Not the store. The gap in the Saints draft selections. We got to go from pick 45 to pick 150 in round 5.
That is 105 picks. Now, we'll see in the coming weeks if the Saints make a move to kind of get in that 3rd round and 4th round. But for the purposes of this draft right here, they do not. So we're skipping from round 2 all the way to the Saints' next pick in round 5. First pick for the Saints in that round, Sean, who you got?
Yeah, this is what made this mock draft hard because it's so hard to get a read on this many day 3 products. But I'm going with Matt Goncalves, tackle out of Pittsburgh. 6'5" or 6'6", 320 pounds. A guy that very rugged in the run game. Not the quickest guy in the world, but can be serviceable in the pass game. And look, this is not by accident. I had 2 tackles in their first 3 picks. Now, obviously, it's 4 different rounds. It's first round and 5th round. But nonetheless, you see how dire the situation is. This is a guy played for Pitt. Probably would be a much higher draft selection had he not gotten hurt last year. And I believe week 3 or week 4 missed the rest of the regular season. But, sometimes these Pitt offensive linemen can come in and they can translate. I think this is a really good value for a guy that you probably, without the injury, you're talking about a 3rd or a 4th round prospect. But this is a guy that can come in. You can get him into your program. Here's a guy you can come in and maybe develop, provide some depth up front, play a lot of games at a very high level, run blocking and pass blocking. Look, he's available for a reason, so he's not elite, but I do think this is exactly the type of prospect the Saints in years past have really hit on, these type of mid-round offensive linemen. And to me, when I watched this guy's tape, it just fit. I just felt it. This is the type of guy that could potentially one of those little day 3 under the radar type picks that could help the Saints.
The biggest pro when it comes to Goncalves is he fits a need. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who has experience and has excelled at both left tackle and right tackle. Mm-hmm. You've seen the Saints move guys around that offensive line, whether it was Penning, whether it was Pede, James Hurst. There's a lot of guys who have played multiple positions. So knowing that he can go to the right tackle, knowing that he could potentially protect the blind side, that works in his favor. And it was interesting. I was looking at player comps, guys who are already in the league, who compare similarly to players coming out. And I found it interesting that the number 1 player comp I saw for him was Nick Saldiveri.
Wow.
The offensive lineman who the Saints just drafted last season. So it's interesting that he has a lot of similar features, and they play the same with the guy who's already on the team. Yeah, so I think he's
which is
good
interesting because Saldiveri is going to play inside.
Right.
I mean, Saldiveri is going to play inside. Maybe that's how they looked, but he played tackle in college at Old Dominion. So that'd be interesting. But look, I've said it before. If Nick Saldiveri somehow takes a leap in year 2, you might have your offensive line issues solved. But you can't expect that. You can't hope for that. I mean, that has to happen naturally on the field. But you got to prepare yourself for the idea that could not happen. So that's the first pick of round 5. Matt Goncalves, tackle out of Pitt. Where we at next?
We got 3 more. So let's roll on to the second pick that the Saints have of round 5. Who you got?
At 168, we're going back to Tallahassee, back to Florida State for cornerback Jarrian Jones. This is a guy, he's played both outside, played inside, but he's probably going to settle in at the nickel position on the next level. He's a guy that has got decent length for a guy that plays that position. He's a guy that's got decent ball skills. Not the greatest when it comes to turning and opening up your hips, which is why he would be available in the middle of the 5th round. But I went through the mock simulations, about 3 or 4 of them. There was a couple that had him up higher, had him in late 3rd, early 4th. Then I went through a couple more, settled in round 5, round 6. So this is why it's so difficult with these day 3 selections, because the grades are all over the place. But I do like the idea of investing in your secondary. I think Lattimore's going to be here, but we don't know that for sure either way. Adebo's coming up on a contract year. We'll see how much longer, even if Lattimore's back next year. Beyond that, who knows? So Jarrian Jones is a guy that can give you some position flexibility, but I do think he settles in at the nickel position. He's a guy that played a lot of football at the collegiate level. I believe had 3 interceptions a season ago. Yep. I think for where they're picking at right here, I think this is decent value. Jarrian Jones, cornerback out of Florida State.
again, it fits a need. You know, you lost Isaac Yiadom last season, so you have a spot where a cornerback can potentially step in and obviously not play every down, but potentially make an impact. We talked about player comps just now. A comp I saw with him, Alontae Taylor.
Wow, how about that?
Very similar to Alontae Taylor, somebody who had to kind of get used to that nickelback role. Now, also about Jerry Jones, the NFL Combine helped him a lot. There were a lot of people who were critiquing his game, critiquing his hips, his ability to change directions, lock on to receivers. But he went to the Combine, and he was at or near the top in the 40-yard dash. He ran a 4.38, at or near the top in the broad jump, at or near the top with the vertical. So showing off how physically dominant that he can be from an athleticism standpoint really helped Jerry Jones in the Combine. And I don't know where he was going before then, but that's what's kind of moved him up in that 5th, maybe 4th, maybe early 6th round range.
Again, there's a wide range you get out of that top 100 pretty much every year, but more importantly, or more specifically this year, because the grades seem to be all over the place when it comes to day 3 selections. I'll be very curious to see the little bit I saw of him when he played a lot of zone, but can play man as well. So obviously with the Saints, you're going to be playing a lot of match man and man coverage. So just something to watch. Again, decent value for a 5th round pick, but we're not done with the 5th round.
Oh, no.
This might be one of my favorite selections of the draft. Where were we at?
3rd pick for the Saints in the 5th round. We're going back to the offense, Sean.
Yeah, we are going back to the offense, and I'm going with Jared Wiley, tight end out of TCU, a big athletic guy, 6'6", 240 pounds, a true pass-catching tight end. And look, Dennis Allen used those words at the NFL owners' meetings. Another pass catcher. Didn't necessarily specify wide receiver or tight end. I'm going with tight end in this because they can certainly add to that room. This is a guy, he's big, he's got a huge catch radius, played really well against Colorado last year. He lines up in the slot. He lines up in the what I call the wide slot, where he's almost all the way to the numbers, and there's a guy next to him, but he's still technically in the slot. But nonetheless, he's a big target, had over 40 catches a season ago. He can be a guy in these 12 personnel packages that you can really use, and you know Kubiak is coming from a place that love to utilize tight ends and fullbacks and 12 personnel and 22 personnel and all those types of things, and multiple tight end groupings. So Jared Wiley is a guy, another one. Grades are a little all over the place when you get to day 3 because there's going to be a team that is going to fall in love with the athleticism and just physically how he just looks like a tight end, an athletic tight end. But I think this guy could end up being a steal if he gets in the right system. So Jared Wiley, tight end out of TCU, is my 5th round pick at number 170 for the New Orleans Saints. Again, an athletic target, and we all know Derek Carr likes throwing the tight ends. So I think Jared Wiley would be a decent selection.
Right, and you mentioned the numbers, 6'6", 250. He ran a 4.6, which is pretty good for a tight end. 47 catches last year at TCU, 520 yards, 8 touchdowns. And one thing that's interesting, tight ends these days don't necessarily pass block a lot because of the way that offenses are, especially the more modern offenses. But he only gave up 1 pressure and didn't give up a single sack when it came to pass protection last year. That was interesting to me. Also interesting is the Saints tight end situation as a whole. I think a lot of people, especially the fantasy football players,
it's a mixed bag,
me included, thought Juwan Johnson last year would be our sleeper, our breakout player, and Juwan Johnson never really put up the volume that you would expect. Foster Moreau mixed in, had catches here or there, but he never had a huge impact. Jimmy Graham was in on red zones. I think he had, 8 catches, 6 touchdowns or something.
Crazy numbers,
Crazy like that. And then you've got Taysom kind of doing everything. But tight end really wasn't a consistent source of productivity last year. So bringing in a young, athletic guy who can go up and get it, he might have a very early impact in this team.
Exactly. And look, if he's got a special trait, or a trait that you can use within your offense, use it, and he can work on the other parts of the game that you like out of a tight end, as the years go on or as the season goes on or the next off season. I don't think he's great at run blocking. It's probably why he's available this late. And obviously in today's NFL, you need your tight ends to block. And in this system in particular, the ground game is so creative and so much movement and everything. You need not just a good blocking tight end, but a tight end knows what he's doing in the blocking game. So probably not there yet in terms of that, but it's a 5th round pick. They're going to have flaws. So to me, Jared Wiley is worth the investment at pick 170. Where are we at next?
You mentioned flaws. This next guy, as we head into the final pick of the 5th round, he's a very unique player. You mentioned, picking a guy in the 5th round. He's not going to be perfect. If he was, he wouldn't be there in the 5th round. But this guy is very interesting. Who's your next 5th round?
All right, at
selection?
175, 5th round, their final 5th round pick, I have running back Dylan Lobby, running back out of New Hampshire. This is the only small school product I invested in. This is a guy, very unique, very interesting player. He wasn't on anybody's radar until Mobile, and that's a good place to kind of introduce yourself because you're playing. It's fully padded practices. You're playing football. You're not in shorts. You're not in tights, running the 40 and doing athletic drills. You do that at the combine, obviously, but the Senior Bowl, you're playing football. And when he was playing football, this guy showed he can play. He doesn't wow you with physical traits. I think he's 5'10", just a shade over 200, kind of stocky build, but he can really catch the ball out of the backfield. That's what caught my eye. He can run the ball well. I don't think he's ever going to be a breakaway running back in terms of the way he runs the ball and break one for 25 or 30. But this guy can really catch the ball well. A very natural pass catcher out of the backfield, can run the flat. I saw one where he's running the wheel out of the backfield. I think he's a little bit of a gamble out of New Hampshire, but he's a guy that really came on the scene and showed how he belonged in terms of against his peers at the Senior Bowl. Senior Bowl was outstanding this year in terms of the prospects that were there, and he was a guy that a lot of big names there, and he certainly was able to catch a few eyes. Now look, he ran like a 4.5 4.40. It wasn't fantastic for a running back. I mean, I get it. He's not going to be a speedster type player, but I do think the fact that he can catch the ball out of the backfield would probably come in with a great attitude. The fact you're at the running back position, it's you got a coordinator that believes in the run game or believes in that position. I wouldn't have a problem with a running back investment. And for me, it comes in the form of Dylan Lobby, running back out of New Hampshire, in the 5th round at pick 175.
And with Lobby, it's very easy to pick apart the pros and the cons. Let's start with the cons. He's a smaller back. He's 5'10". He's not going to blow you away physically. You mentioned the 4.5 4.40-yard dash time, not very fast, and he went to a smaller school, so you could certainly talk about the level of competition that he was playing against. But getting to the pros, last year, he had 715 rushing yards, 699 receiving yards, almost more receiving yards than you have rushing yards. 9 touchdowns rushing, 7 touchdowns receiving. So his biggest strength lies in his versatility. Yeah. And that's a guy who Clint Kubiak is going, if he winds up with the Saints, he would love that versatility. You look at the guys on this roster, not just this year, but over the past few years who have really been able to make their mark in New Orleans. We know what Alvin Kamara has done being versatile. Turn the clock back a little further, we know what Pierre Thomas was able to do with his versatility.
Sproles.
We know what Darren Sproles was able to do with his versatility. Even if you want to go all the way back to Reggie Bush, Saints have consistently loved running backs who could come in here and not just pound the ball, guys who can get outside, guys who can run routes. And Dylan Lobby is a guy who showed that ability in college. Now, granted, it was at New Hampshire. You're going to have to see if he can get on an NFL field and still produce at that level. But if he can, I mean, that would be a very underrated pick at the end of the 5th round.
Well, that's just it. I mean, when you're picking this many guys on the back end of the draft, they're not all going to hit, but that's just part of the process of you have to really trust your scouting when it comes to these types of players on day 3. That's why they call day 3 Scouts Day to Shine. All right, that closes the book on round 5 for the Saints. All 4 picks in round 5. Let's move on to the Saints' 2 6th-round picks, starting with where are they first?
The number 1 pick in the 6th round. I lost track of the numbers at this point, but the first pick in the 6th round.
It's at 190. That's what it is. All right, this is a very unique player.
Okay.
Very unique. Sayane Vaki.
Yeah.
Safety out of Utah, but there's a very interesting development with Vaki. He is a safety / running back. Yes. He had, I have the stats here, 42 carries, over 300 yards, in 7 touchdowns. Is that right? Or is that 2 touchdowns? I'm not sure exactly. Maybe we could check on that in a second. Yeah. But it was 7 yards a carry. It was 2 touchdowns, excuse me. It was 7 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. Sayane Vaki, he's a guy that's going to play safety at the next level. He's disgusted, but he's a very unique player because it wasn't just for kicks. I mean, they did it because they needed it with Vaki. And Utah is a decent program. They have really held their own when they got into the Pac-12. He's more of a down safety, but he's a guy who's got great recognition in terms of where the ball seems to be heading. I don't know if he's got quite the range to play the deep half. He's more of a guy that's going to kind of come down on the box, or you can blitz him, or he's solid in the run fits. He's a pretty sure tackler, pretty good route recognition, has a pretty good feel for tracking the ball and going to get the ball. But he's a guy that the safety position is one of need. I do think you can add another player to that safety group. Doesn't mean he's going to make the team as a 6th-round pick. We've seen this team cut 6th-round picks before, but again, you're relying on certain traits that you like about a player in this part of the draft and where you're at as a roster and what you need in terms of your depth chart. And this is a guy that would almost certainly have to be a beast on special teams, but if he's willing to play running back and safety, I'm quite sure he'd be willing to play special teams as well. Right. So I had to do my research on him because I wasn't familiar with him. Then I kept looking at him, then I went and watched the tape some more, then I went and watched an interview with him. So Sione Vaki is a guy I'm going with the Saints' first 6th-round pick.
I also was not familiar with his game, but the more you dig, he kind of reminded me of a player who may sound familiar to a lot of Saints fans who watch a lot of NFC South football. A guy who plays for the Carolina Panthers, Shaq Thompson.
Okay.
Shaq Thompson in college also played defense, played running back, and he's spoken about how playing defense and offense in college kind of gives you a different perspective. So when I saw that, and obviously Shaq Thompson was drafted a lot higher than Sione Vaki is projected to be drafted, when I saw that, it was interesting to me because playing the defense, playing the offense, I think that will give him a different outlook on how the game of football is played. He's a productive tackler. He's a big hitter, which you would expect from a guy who plays safety and running back. And we talked about earlier with the offensive tackle. It fits a need. One of the few starters from last year that you don't have coming back played safety in Marcus May.
That's it.
Now you've got Jordan Howden there. You've brought back Jonathan Abrams, so you've got some veteran faces back there. But there will certainly be a little bit of a battle or a competition to see who winds up taking Marcus May's spot. Sione Vaki, especially if he can produce and impress on special teams, maybe the spot is there. You're going to have to go fight for it. If Sione Vaki does wind up in New Orleans, there's an opportunity for him.
There could be an opportunity. And look, I'll just say this. The Saints like unique things on the scouting report. A safety and running back, and a productive running back at that's going to catch eyes. And when you're this late in the process, there's certain things that have to stand out about you. That would certainly stand out. Sione Vaki out of the University of Utah. So, look, that's where I'm at with it. So I guess we'll move on now. Where we at next?
We got 2 more picks left. Okay. This is the Saints' last pick in the 6th round. Who we got?
All right, is it 199 or 198?
I think it's 199.
Okay, 199, round 6. All right, we're going back to Penn State with a linebacker, Curtis Jacobs, 6'1", about 230 pounds. A guy has played a lot of football. What I liked about him is he played well against Michigan back-to-back years. He had a phenomenal bowl game 2 years ago. I believe it might have been against Utah, where he had double-digit tackles. He's a guy. He's available this late because he's not the greatest read, recognition, and go. Like, it takes him a second to process a little bit against the run. But he's a guy that's decent in coverage, and they're just hard to find coverage linebackers in the NFL. And then when I say decent, I mean, okay, I'm not going to sit here and say he's an elite cover linebacker, but I do think that's a little bit more of a positive thing he has in his toolbox, so to speak. He's a guy, once again, this stage you're going to have to play special teams. He's going to have to beast on special teams, but I like that he's played a lot of productive football in a conference that you see a lot of different. We just talked about the Big Ten, so how they bring some of the things you see in that league you will see on Sundays. It's maybe unlike any other league in college football. So I really liked the value here at 199. I'm sure he's probably a little disappointed that he would last this long in the draft because I'm sure he had high hopes to get drafted higher. But if he's available at 199. Give him what you need, give him what you have at the linebacker position. You got Gay on a 1-year deal. Demario Davis is near the tail end of his career. We'll see what happens with Pete Werner. I think he's going into the final year of his contract. I think they're still high on him. But nonetheless, you could add to that room. And Curtis Jacobs from Penn State is a guy that I picked at just before the 200 selections at 199. Curtis Jacobs, linebacker out of Penn State.
He's a very explosive guy. That's what I noticed looking at him. He's very explosive, and I do like that he can step into a Saints linebacker room where There's no pressure to play immediately. I know a lot of guys want to play early, but when you've got a veteran, like I talk about veterans a lot on this show. When you have a veteran like Demario Davis, who has played high-level football for so long, that is a wealth of knowledge for any rookie to walk into and learn from. You've got Willie Gay, who's been around for a little while. You've got Pete Werner. You've got a lot of guys who wouldn't necessarily put any pressure on you to play early, but you can sit back and you can learn from those guys. And the main criticism when it comes to him is the mental part of it. You know, how quick he picks stuff up, quick he can recognize stuff, as you mentioned.
That slight hesitation in the NFL is deadly. You can get caught. It is deadly in the NFL.
Exactly. You can teach that. The explosiveness that he plays with, you can't teach that. So that's what I like, is he has the stuff that you can't teach, and the stuff that you can teach, get him in the room, get him with Demario, get him with Werner, get him with Willie Gay, and we can see what happens.
Interesting selection. Again, a guy that's played a lot of football, big-time football at a big-time conference at a big-time school. So if he's there, I say he's worth it. All right, we have reached the end of Fazende's mock draft. Yes, I just referred to myself in the third person. We have reached round 7. Y'all are going to be curious about this one.
I smiled at this one.
But I really feel like when you're picking late in the draft, you look at a position need, yes, but also can this guy make the team? We've seen 7th-round picks make the team before. Several, and have been productive players. So I picked this player. Why don't you set me up with it?
This guy does not play on the offense. Mm-hmm. This guy does not play on the defense. Sean Fazende, who are we going in our mock draft? Your mock draft, 7th round. Who we got?
All right, at pick 239, I am going with Tory Taylor, punter out of Iowa. Why shouldn't Lou Hedley have some competition? Why shouldn't he have some competition? You talk about a 7th-round selection, and this may be too far for Tory Taylor, because obviously he shot up to the forefront of Iowa because their offense was so atrocious last year. He's an older guy, a 26-year-old Australian punter. They seem to like those kind of guys. Knocks the you-know-what out of the ball when he punts it. And I don't think Lou Hedley had nearly the year the Saints have kind of talked it up to being a season ago. He's another older guy. He's over the age of 30. Hedley I'm talking about. Taylor come in, yes, he would be an older draft pick, but younger than the punter that you have. And I'm all for competition, man. And I am for competition. And if you're the Saints and you need to get better in certain areas, you can't tell me that field position wouldn't be one of them, both in the return game and also the punting game. So if you got a guy that's available in the 7th round, as opposed to selecting a wide receiver or an edge player that wouldn't make the roster with this pick, a punter, mano-a-mano, we can all see it because a punter is very tangible. You can see what they do when they kick it. Yep. Can he corner kick it? Can he Aussie-style kick it? Can he just whatever the case may be. If he's better, give him the job. Now, this might be a little late for Tory Taylor, because there's some write-ups that I saw that he could go round 5 or round 6. But some teams just simply will not draft a specialist by any means. The Saints have done it before. They did it with Thomas Morstead. That worked out okay. Yep. They've done it with kickers before. They did it with, I think the last one they got was it Taylor Melhoff back in 2008. He didn't make the team. They went with Garrett Hartley. But I am perfectly fine with investing in a punter, and a punter that you believe can be a difference maker, because punters do make a difference. The good ones versus the bad ones, it makes a difference. And like I said before, you're trying to get every advantage possible. You're trying to get better in every possible way from a season to get back into the postseason. That is a very tangible area. So I am perfectly fine with Tory Taylor as a Saints 7th-round selection.
Let me tell you what, Sean. I am so here for the Australian punter battle that could potentially take place at Saints training camp. And the big thing about Tory Taylor, like you mentioned, the offense at Iowa was so bad. He got a lot of practice punting that ball. He's got a huge leg. The criticism on him is, ironically, his leg is so strong, sometimes he overkicks his coverage and teams are able to return the ball on him. But again, we talked about earlier about the stuff that you can teach compared to the stuff you can't teach. Yep. You cannot teach the kind of leg that Tory Taylor has. Yes, he will turn 27. He's 26 now. He'll be 27 before his rookie year. But you're not drafting him to be a running back. He's not a receiver. He's not taking hits. 27-year-old as a punter.
And he's younger than the punter that you have.
Exactly.
He's younger than the guy you have.
So you'll live with that. So I'm here for, if I want a punter, I want a guy who has a strong leg. He can learn the accuracy. He can learn how to pin you within the 20, within the 10, yada, yada, yada. But I think punter was an area where the Saints lacked at times last year. And, he had his moments. Lou Hedley had his moments. He had some good ones. Pinned the Saints, within the 5 every now and then. But I'm all for the competition.
I'm all for it. And you got this many day 3 selections. You should absolutely invest in your special teams. So I am fine with Tory Taylor, punter out of Iowa. That will conclude my first mock draft. So just let me read these off again. If you're kind of jumping in late, or if you're if you kind of skimmed through and didn't hear all of them. All right, let's start at the top.
Right.
Round pick number 14. We have
Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle out of Penn State.
All right. Round 2, Braden Fisk, defensive tackle out of Florida State at pick 45. Pick 150, round 5.
Matt Goncalves, offensive tackle out of Pittsburgh.
Round 5, pick 168, their second, 5th round pick. Jarian Jones, cornerback out of Florida State at pick 170, also round 5.
Jared Wiley, the big tight end out of TCU.
Love that pick. At 175, round 5, the only small school product, Dylan Lobby, running back out of New Hampshire.
Another fun one.
Another fun one there. Let's move to the 6th round. Pick 190. Who do we have?
Sione Vake, the safety who played at Utah, also played a little running back,
Also played a little bit of running back. So, yeah, got a little bit of versatility there. Our second 6th round pick at 199. I went with Curtis Jacobs, linebacker out of Penn State. And finally, to wrap it all up, in the 7th round, pick 239, we have
the guy who can give us our Australian punter battle, Tory Taylor out of Iowa.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning into that mock draft. Now, a couple things. I know we're going a little long here than we normally would, but the Saints have a lot of picks. A couple things, a couple points. One, I don't think they end up with 9 selections. I do think you'll see almost certainly a trade up, if not multiple trade ups, on day 3. The question is, do they trade back early on day 1 or day 2 to find themselves or to fit themselves in that find a spot in the 3rd or 4th round gap? And also this, and you're probably wondering, has Sean lost his mind? How did he not select an edge pass rusher? I had one on here. I took that player off. What happens is simply this. The dire need at tackle took over.
Yep.
And what could be available in the 1st and 2nd round combination, I just did not feel comfortable with the 2nd round edge player that was available. Thus, I went with an interior defensive lineman. And also this, let's just count them up. Peyton Turner, Cam Jordan, Carl Granderson, Chase Young,
Tano Passanio.
Who am I missing? There's one more missing. But they have 6 or 7.
Foskey.
What's that?
Isaiah Foskey,
6, another 2nd-year guy you invested in last year. To me, you have invested a lot in that position. That needs to come to fruition. At least someone has to emerge out of that group. It's not like we don't know who the top end is going to be. We don't know who the depth pieces are going to be. But it's not like you're bare at that position like you are at the top 2 at offensive tackle and defensive tackle. So that was why I avoided the edge pass rusher. Also this. What about wide receiver or quarterback? I still think they believe in Jake Haener a lot.
Yeah.
So I didn't go with a day 3 quarterback. And then wide receiver, it was a toss-up out of wide receiver or pass catcher. So I went with a pass-catching tight end over wide receiver. But make no mistake about it, I will have another one up here 3 weeks from today. So April 22nd, we pod April 22nd, the Monday of draft week. I will have my 2nd and final mock draft, and this could all be different based off what I hear, what I research, and what could or could not be available.
Because think about where we might have been 3 weeks ago from today. This would have looked a lot different. If we didn't get the Ryan Ramczyk news, I don't think you probably go offensive tackle in the 1st round.
Yeah.
I think you might go with a defensive end like Jared Verse.
Verse.
Maybe we're looking for a tight end like Brock Bowers. Maybe I've seen Brian Thomas. He's picked up the LSU receiver.
Absolutely.
He's picked up a lot of steam after that pro day. So maybe the Saints go Brian Thomas in that 1st round. But once the Ryan Ramczyk injury news dropped and you see kind of how dire that need is, if Ramczyk is unable to go in 2024, you got to pivot. And you got to move, and you got to draft for need. And the one thing I noticed about your draft, offensive tackles, tight ends, cornerbacks, safeties, linebackers, a lot of needs that the Saints have are getting filled. It may not be the, oh, wow, that's, this guy's going to come in and be the face of the franchise picks. But these guys, if picked, they fit a need, and they can help the Saints be better in 2024, in an NFC South that is still very winnable.
Very winnable. Let's not lose sight of that. This NFC South is still very winnable, and this team needs an impactful draft class. And hopefully, these are a few of the guys that could potentially fit. We'll see what happens. Be sure to leave your comments below. We know you agree with everything we say. We know you agree with this entire draft. I know you think I'm a genius. You think I'm a draft guy. You know exactly. You think that I know exactly what I'm talking about. Just let me know below in the comment section. We'll do our best to respond. My friend, we went over today. 40-minute podcast.
This might be the longest one we've done.
We're normally in about 20 to 25 minutes, but hey, this is all good stuff. The mock drafts, I know you guys like it, and you have anything else for us today?
Oh, no, I am packed out with information.
Yeah, we went to the vault with this one. A lot of research and a lot of analysis and a lot of information. All right, so that's going to do it for us. For Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.